Welcome everybody to the August meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee here at Towcester. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence and appointment of substitute members.
Through you, Chair, we have apologies for absence from councillors Russell and Pritchard. No substitutes attending in their places.
Okay, thank you. Do any members here have any declaration of interest of any of the items posted on the agenda this afternoon? And if so, please declare it. Okay, that's none. Minutes. For those that are here on the 16th of July, you've had a copy of the minutes. Do you accept they're a true record of what was on that day? And if so, I will sign them accordingly. Okay, thank you for that. And we're on to Chairman's announcements. Under the Openness of Local Government Bodies Regulation 2014, members of the public or those party to the meeting are permitted to film, broadcast or report on the meeting subject to the efficient running of the meeting not being affected. Only those people who have registered in line with the committee's speaking procedure can address the committee. Those speaking are not permitted to ask questions of either members or officers. Members of the public are requested not to call out during the committee's decisions on any item. All speakers will have 5 minutes in which to make their statement. Participants addressing the planning committee will be advised when they have 60 seconds of their allocated time remaining and will be expected to cease talking immediately on being advised that their time is up. Speakers may be asked to remain seated after they have addressed the committee to answer questions from the planning committee members. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm does sound, evacuation instructions will be given by the democratic officers, and the assembly point is at the bottom of the steps on the mount, which is the large green area over to your left. Could electronic devices please be switched off or onto silent mode? For those members using laptops, could I ask please they press F1 on their machines? A blue light will come on indicating that the sound is muted. This meeting will be webcast on the council's corporate YouTube channel. Therefore, when speaking, please use the microphone in front of you. That's it on that side. I have 3 other announcements to make. Announcement 1. The application before the committee today was discussed on the 21st of May 2024. The matter for committee today is to discuss the reason for deferral in relation to the additional highway matters and the information contained in the late representations only, please. Secondly, the application at Dallington Grange, which was held on the 21st of November 2023, the committee requested that the chair liaise with Stuart Timmis regarding the delivery of affordable housing within the SOO taking place at the earliest opportunity. Committee heard on the 23rd of April that he had advised we are waiting for the land deal to progress before we can have a discussion around bringing the affordable housing element of the development forward. The officer may be in a position to update the committee further in July 2024. The update is the Assistant Director of Assets and Environment has subsequently advised that the council has been considering options for most effectively delivering the proposed 100 affordable houses on the land retained by the council of this site. It is expected an announcement will be made this autumn on how this will be achieved. So by the time we ask, it'll be nearly a year, but hopefully we will get there. And thirdly, I would remind committee members you should have been in receipt of invitations to attend a briefing session scheduled for the afternoon of the 3rd of September 2024, which will cover both the SPD and the highways calculations in terms of traffic movement in respect to the DHL site. Also the site visit that morning at 9:55 on the same day. I think we're nearly there. Being for the benefit of the webcast, I'd like to introduce the top table to you all. On my far right, I have James Edmonds from Democratic Services. On my right, Catherine Hall is our legal advisor for the day. Myself, Phil Bignell, who's chairman of this meeting. On my left, Nikki Scaife in charge of planning. On her left, Rebecca Grant, who will be presenting the application this afternoon. And at the end, Jason Conway, who is from Highways, who will assist Rebecca in any questions that she may not be able to answer. So with no further ado, we'll move to item 5 of the agenda. And I ask on Rebecca Grant to do the presentation on the land for redevelopment of Ransom Road, Northampton. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for residential developments of 217 dwellings, landscaping, open space with infrastructure and works. So as Chair has already mentioned, members resolved at the Strategic Committee on the 21st of May to defer a decision to enable consideration of a potential TRO traffic regulation order to review parking restrictions along Ransom Road and for details of the TRO to be secured in a 106 agreement. Following committee, the applicants have undertaken and submitted a car parking survey and transport update note. The full details of this are set out in the report. The applicants have also updated the layout to provide 32 parking spaces to the north of Ransom Road, adjacent to the open space, for public use, and provided details of potential TRO along the south side of Ransom Road near Asda. The committee report focuses on the reasons for deferral. The May committee report is, however, attached for reference together with highway comments on the application. I'll just provide a little bit of background. So this just shows the location of Ransom Road. It's a brownfield site, approximately 11.6 hectares. The site is located a mile to the southeast of Northampton town centre. Immediately to the north is the former railway line, beyond which is the university campus to the northeast, and residential development to the northwest. To the southwest are existing commercial units, and directly to the south is Delapre Park, which contains the registered Northampton battlefield and Delapre Abbey, which is Grade 2 listed. I've run through a few of the photos that were shown at the previous committee. So this is views looking from north, from Ransom Road towards the university and the residential development to the north, beyond the former railway line. On the left, this is from Ransom Road. This is a commercial building within the application site, which is due to be demolished. And then there's, on the right-hand side, there's properties within Cloughton Road. There's a few photographs along Ransom Road, where the industrial buildings are. This is taken further along Ransom Road, where it's currently blocked off. And then further along, you've got where it links into the footpath. So there's one running along the eastern boundary onto University Drive on the left-hand side, and then the other one goes through to Delapre Lake. And this is just at the northeastern side of the application site. So the footpath running along the eastern boundary leading to University Drive. So a number of representations have commented about the possibility of taking access from University Drive for the submitted application. This was discussed at the May committee. 2 access points were proposed for the previous application in 2004, which proposed up to 800 dwellings, one from Ransom Road and one from what is now known as University Drive to the northeast. Whilst the proposal had a resolution to approve, the sections 106 was never completed due to issues of contamination and lack of financial viability. Taking access to the site from University Drive was discussed at the May committee, and it was highlighted that firstly, this is not part of the proposal put forward under consideration. Secondly, University Drive is a private access and not adopted highway. It is understood that the university previously raised safety concerns for students and staff with access through their campus. And then finally, policy MO3 in the Northampton plan secures the former railway line as a future transport link running east-west, so providing the vehicular link would sever this potential transport link. This is the layout, and it hasn't changed other than the additional parking spaces to the south, which I will talk about. But just briefly, dwellings are positioned in the northern part of the site with open space to the south. Due to contamination in the south, it's not possible to build dwellings in this area. There are a number of pedestrian routes and linkages around the site itself, and also linking to the wider area and existing footpaths. The original report sets out the key planning issues in detail, and these were discussed at the previous committee. The focus of this presentation and the committee report is the work that has been undertaken following the deferral at the May committee. The applicants have undertaken a car parking survey. WNC Highways agree with the findings of that survey, and it would appear the majority of the parking on the southern side of Ransom Road is related to activities of business units rather than student parking. However, student parking may be exacerbated at other times of the year. It should be noted that even if student parking was filling the existing spaces, that this would not change the development impact on the area, as a parking survey highlights that there is parking capacity for residents in the area. And this will be improved by the additional 32 spaces which are being created. And they're just to the south of the open space on the north side of Ransom Road. The previous layouts that came towards the May Committee showed 16 parking spaces. Following concerns raised by members during the previous committee, the applicants have agreed to fund a TRO consultation and, if required, resultant works near the junction with London Road. The mechanism to secure this and funding, if deemed necessary, will be secured within the 106 agreement, a draft of which has now been submitted to the council. The results of the TRO will be creating additional space for cars to stack whilst at the junction of London Road. This prevents residents parking at certain times of the day during the week, but will allow residents to park overnight when parking is at a premium. So the parking survey has demonstrated that there is some residual street parking capacity during the day. Therefore, as can be seen by the slide here, a single yellow line restriction along the southern side of Ransom Road opposite Asda's entrance will not have a negative impact on the overall parking capacity of the area, but will increase the effective stacking capacity during peak hours. To conclude, WNC Highways have no objection to the proposed development and do not consider that highway improvements are necessary to mitigate the impact of the development due to the minimal impact it will have. There are some existing parking issues in the area. However, it's considered that the development itself will actually help resolve this to some degree. Furthermore, the applicant's additional proposals of a TRO review and adding further parking along the green space will further mitigate the existing issues, benefiting the residents of Ransom Road. Finally, there's no existing history of accidents along the Ransom Road, London Road junction that would cause concern. I'll just draw members' attention to late items, that's the written update. So 2 further representations have been received in relation to the proximity of the development to the former railway line and the potential that that is opened up in the future. But as you can see from the submitted layout, the houses are set back approximately about 32 metres. You've got the access road, you've then got an area of open space which provides a buffer. There's also some updates to conditions. Condition 28 within late items just needs a further amendment to remove reference to the Badger survey. This is meant to be a walkover survey to be carried out by an ecologist prior to works commencing on site to see if conditions have changed. And also condition 32 to remove reference to off-site B&G, as this will be covered within the section 106 agreement. I would also draw members' attention to the traffic survey, which has been submitted by the Far Cotton and Delapre Community Council. The survey data has been submitted, but this has not been verified with an analysis of that survey. Both our highway officer and the applicant's highway consultant have reviewed the results of the survey and concluded that the data collaborates with what is in the original traffic assessment. Therefore, WNC Highways maintain their previous position that they do not object to the proposed development and do not consider that the highway improvements are necessary to mitigate the impact of developments due to the minimal impact it will have. So just to provide an overall conclusion, with reference to the other issues that were discussed at the previous committee, it's acknowledged that this is a brownfield site in a sustainable location on the edge of Northampton town centre, and it has a number of complexities which have significantly hindered the site coming forward for development, as outlined in the original report. It is also acknowledged that there are considerable limitations to be considered in respect of what the development can realistically deliver. It is not possible for the scheme to deliver contributions towards health, education and libraries. It's also not possible for the scheme to deliver a B&G on-site. However, off-site mitigation through a bespoke scheme and funding is achievable. These limitations must, however, be balanced with the positive aspects of the development in respect to the regeneration of redundant site and the visual enhancement to the area this provides, along with the provision of much needed housing, affordable housing provision, and an extensive area of open space for the new and existing community. This is the balanced recommendation with regard to the site having a long-standing allocation in the local plan for residential development. WNC not being able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply for Northampton, and the site coming forward to deliver a high quality, sustainable design within a sustainable location. The recommendation is therefore to approve with delegated authority to the Assistant Director for Planning and Development to amend the conditions as necessary and can complete the Section 106 and secure the following: affordable housing provision, open space management, funding for the ecological mitigation measures in relation to the impact on the development upon the Upper Nen Valley gravel pits and biodiversity habitats, the TRO review and a monitoring fee. It is also pointed out that the development will provide a SIL contribution of over £1 million. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Rebecca. It's now the chance for members to ask questions of the officer on the presentation we've just heard. Has anybody got a specific question? Councillor Manners.
Thank you, Chair. Rebecca, could you just point out where the 32 extra spaces are? North of Ransom Road is what it says.
Apologies. Directly to the south. How do you do your little
I haven't got a mouse in here.
no.
Yeah.
Sorry, if you can see where the central area of open space is, if you just where the circle is, go directly down. And then it's in that area, it's directly down actually, there's 32 parking spaces along the northern side of Ransom Road.
It's not marked on the plan, is what?
It is marked on that plan, but
Oh,
the
it is.
scale is very small, so it's hard to see.
It. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Gonzalez Savage,
Thank you,
please.
Chair. Just following on, Rebecca, is it the area, just to clarify, that has been highlighted with the little white area, white bordering on the road, the additional spaces? And where will the turning circle be for those cars? Because currently the road's obviously stopped up close to the care facility. I think it's just there's a piece on the boundary line there you can see. And there are no cars that physically turn out of an area other than on a drive there. So how will vehicles turn? Because I can see more than 32 cars being parked down there. At the moment, there are cars down there, walked there this morning, that have multiple car park tickets on their windscreens that have not been effectively moved and are not being moved. There are about 7 abandoned vehicles there, completely unroadworthy, without tyres, without wheels, without license plates on some of them as well. They haven't got tickets on their windscreens. I'm just wondering how on earth that area is going to be enforced, because quite clearly it's a road that was designed to access the open area as the amenity site as it was, and that has still about 4 or 5 different gated areas that have been used for going into the site and come back out again. But there's no planned turning area otherwise. Thank you.
Yeah, Jason.
Yes, so generally for a turning area, we require a minimum of 6 metres manoeuvring space. The road in that area is wider than 6 metres. The parking spaces are in lay-bys, parallel lay-bys. So that will allow for vehicles to be able to manoeuvre in and out of the bays and turn around within that area. With regards to the parking all over the place at the moment and parking on WL lines, etc. That is a problem. It's something that has been allowed to go on, which probably shouldn't. It is an enforcement problem. Once you have a front-facing development there, and residents start complaining about it, the enforcement teams are located in the town centre, not very far away. They will be more than happy to start ticketing that area. One of the things that we did include when asking for the extra spaces was for them to be included in the highway, so that we have the option down the road to place further parking restrictions. So that could be in the form of limited waiting. So you might have 2, 3 or more hours limited waiting, which could prevent some of the businesses leaving vehicles there for extended periods of time. So that gives us options in the future. Whereas if it was on the development land, they wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay, but if I may, Mr. Chairman, so currently we have a road that's stopped up, so halfway you just can't drive
Yeah.
it because the concrete blocks across the road there. Once they're removed and the additional spaces are put on the legal spaces, I'm absolutely sure that all the other areas around it will also be parked on and at. If currently we're only enforcing by putting tickets, enforcement notices on vehicles that nothing's happening. I mean, it's ridiculous putting a second ticket on a vehicle.
Right.
And most of those tickets now are at least a week, if not more, out of date. So it doesn't make any sense at all. So there's no real enforcement taking place down there. It's a very easy place to go and park down there and then walk
Yeah.
into town. So I can only see that matter getting worse the moment that the concrete
Yeah.
blocks are removed and the road is opened all the way through. So we do need to put some sort of turning point in there because it will be impassable. You just won't be able to turn a vehicle. I appreciate what you're saying about the 6 meters,
Yeah.
but that's only when there aren't any vehicles there. There will be vehicles there. It's a fact, and enforcement,
Yeah.
unfortunately, is not very good down there. So I'd reach out to the enforcement teams if you've got any contacts there and ask them to come and take some of those vehicles away.
Yeah, with regards to taking the vehicles away, that wouldn't be the civil enforcement teams that would take them away, I don't believe. For ticketing, I'm not entirely sure on that, to be honest. If they're getting ticketed repeatedly, I wouldn't imagine it's people that are parking for the town centre. I would imagine it's the businesses and unregistered cars for the businesses. I'm not entirely sure how we go about enforcing that, but it's something that we can look at. There's probably ways and mechanisms that we can start looking at, but it's something that has been allowed to happen over time because it hasn't been causing a problem. But there's probably ways and mechanisms that we can start to apply to start moving these vehicles on if they're being left without tax, without MOT, etc. Then we can probably move these vehicles on.
So I believe there's an Elvis scheme, which is the end of life vehicle impound scheme effectively
Yeah.
that can be put into action there, and it certainly ought to be.
Yeah, I think it's the case that it's a dead end area that has just been kind of left to the industrial units to do as they will at the moment. And the hope is, and the expectation is, once we have a front facing development, that should clean up this area from a highways perspective of we won't have cars being littered around and left all over the place on the verges, etc., where the WL lines are, and enforcement will ramp up in that area.
Okay, at Delapre Abbey, which is just across the road there, there are numerous vehicles, 60 or so vehicles a day that park there that are from the university and from the town. So there are vehicles that are not parking there that will park there, guaranteed. They'll be displaced from effectively Delapre because that'd be a closer point. So we must take that on board. And I think it really is responsible for us now to make sure there is a turning circle of some description on that road to allow enough space to have vehicles not being. I can otherwise see as residents, they're going to have this continuous scenario of cars trying to do 3-point turns on a road that's just chock-a-block, and also vehicles using it for the wrong reason and dangerous. Absolutely.
Of course you can.
Sorry, can I just make a comment that it's not, just to be clear, it's not for this development to deal with existing parking issues, which I think we all acknowledge there is, and the development itself is providing more than sufficient parking plus this additional parking, which the applicants didn't really need to do, but take on board. There are concerns about parking conditions, but it's not for this application to resolve those essentially. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? Any questions for? Yes.
Chair,
Councillor
it's probably
Purser.
discussed at the last meeting, and which I was absent at, but who will be responsible for the management of the open space?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There will be a management company that deals with the open space. And that will be secured in the 106 agreement.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Humphreys, please.
Thank you. This is a bit beyond the parameters of what we're discussing, but I feel it needs to be said. This is a long-awaited regeneration project with obviously a lot of complexities, but we've heard that the developer's not contributing anything towards health, education, and libraries. I'm just wondering what problems will be shoring up, assuming this is granted, with 217 extra households needing access to those services. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, we did discuss this at the previous committee, but a viability assessment was submitted with the application, and unfortunately, it can't deliver those contributions that have been requested. It is providing what I've talked about in terms of biodiversity, affordable housing as well, and the most positive is as you've already said, it's the regeneration of that site.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to speakers' question time. So initially I've got Danielle Bird, who's an objector, who I believe is joining us remotely. Would that be true?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you hear us, Danielle?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Absolutely loud and clear, yes. So when you start, I will start the clock going for 5 minutes, and I will give you a warning at 4 minutes that you have a minute to go. So settle down, and when you want to start, just start.
Perfect, thank you. Okay. Good afternoon. My name's Danielle Bird. I'm a resident in Far Cotton and a qualified sustainability professional. So I'm here today to object to the planning application and address the committee to raise concerns that support my objection. The points raised are from my experiences as a resident in this area and directly impacted by the development, and from sustainable development perspective. The key concerns I wish to raise are the increased traffic, potential impact on air quality in the community. The increased traffic of this development is a primary concern due to negative externalities on local residents from increased congestion and pollution, increased risk of highway safety, and increased stress. The traffic survey, I know we've alluded to it earlier, but originally completed for the application, I feel is unrepresentative, and using data from the independent week-long survey, the results are staggering. A total of 167,000 vehicles passing through the junction in 1 week alone. On average, this equates to up to 25,000 vehicles a day, with an average of around 1,000 vehicles per hour per day. They're not typical peak hours. Increased traffic flow over 1,000 vehicles per hour range between 12 to 14 hours each day. And the implications of this are astounding when you think of adding 217 dwellings and the additional vehicles to a junction that is not fit for purpose even now. The entire junction and the connecting roads must be considered, not just the one exit on Ransom Road. If you're a resident or visitor to the area that uses this, you would understand the inadequacy of the current infrastructure. The concern over increased traffic leads to air quality issues. It's a shame that the air quality assessment hadn't been done to ensure it doesn't pose a risk and is in accordance with the aim set out in the WNC draft air quality action plan. There are NO2 diffusion tubes that have been installed, but there's no available data to review. It's not ethical or responsible to build such a development with air quality implications without having that data to review and analyse first. Air quality is a public health issue and should be taken very seriously. Using some average carbon dioxide emission calculations from a recent study found the traffic passing through and idling at the junction has potential to produce around 160 tonnes of carbon dioxide a day. Particulate matter, serious pollutants associated with traffic emissions and construction works. The diffusion tubes installed don't measure this, so I'm just concerned with the availability of sufficient PM data, as this pollutant can cause severe health problems. The council has the social housing policy, whereby 35% of social housing must be included in developments of over 15 dwellings. This development can offer only 11% due to the cost of developing it on a brownfield site. It also means that they cannot provide funding to the local community. And so how does the council propose finding places in schools, doctors and dentists if the proposed development cannot provide funds to assist with these matters, or wellbeing facilities and amenities to the residents? This particular location doesn't seem practical for such a development if it is non-compliant with these policies. Reading through the supporting ecology assessments, it doesn't really meet the biodiversity net gain requirements and results in a net loss of 72%. Couldn't adhere to the mitigation hierarchy, doesn't promote conservation or enhancement of biodiversity, and contradicts WNC's approach to biodiversity. The only measure is to offset elsewhere and costs nearly £100,000 to do so, whilst destroying a habitat of significance. So I understand that there's a housing crisis and that councils have orders billed by the government, included on the green belt. So this objection is not an objection to additional housing that we need. It's an objection to this particular proposal as it stands that is far from sustainable in the whole sense of the term. So significant environmental impacts, doesn't promote social well-being and potential risk of public health issues, and economically unfeasible due to the expense of developing on the brownfield site. So I'm therefore objecting to the proposal as it currently stands, and I'm asking for the council to reconsider the plans and look at alternatives which might provide a compromise. For example, reduction in the number of houses, but still building them, and therefore
1 minute to go.
able to provide funds for the community amenities, build the needed social housing, and retain more of the land to conserve biodiversity whilst creating accessible green space for the community. I'd like to end this statement by reiterating the importance of having all air pollution data available before any decision is made, and further traffic surveys to gain a more reliable overview of the traffic flow of the infrastructure and the air quality of the site. And from a concerned resident who's quite exhausted with traffic management issues in the area, including the lack of active travel infrastructure, please reconsider this proposal and to listen to local knowledges. There is potential for this to be a sustainable development whereby the needs of housing, biodiversity, community and council obligations could be met. As it stands, it doesn't seem very feasible for the proposal of 217 dwellings. Thank you.
Excellent timing, Danielle.
Got it all in there.
If you'd like to remain there for a second, and then maybe questions from members. I look around and any members got any questions of Danielle? If so, please indicate. No? Okay. Thank you, Richard Dean, for your submission.
Thank you.
We now move on to John Bright from the Far Cotton and Delapre Community Council, who is objecting to this application. If you'd like to come forward, sir. If you pull that very close to you, because it's not as sensitive as you think, press the button in the middle and it should get a red light on. And when you commence, I'll give you a 4-minute warning. You'll have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, councillors. My name is John Bright. I'm the chair for Far Cotton and Delapre Community Council. The proposed development is in our area. It is significant and the largest seen for a decade. Therefore, I'm keen to outline the concerns we have. These include the impact the development have on Ransom Road and London Road Junction, potential impact on air quality in the locality, the safe and appropriate pedestrian access and egress to the proposed development, and Section 106 contribution. Firstly, the single access to the proposed development is via Ransom Road. The Community Council believes this single access is unsuitable as the junction of Ransom Road and London Road struggles to cope with current traffic flows. The applicant relies on a transport assessment from 2022, but traffic was only measured on 3 occasions, between 8 AM and 9 AM on a weekday, between 5 PM and 6 PM on a weekday, and between 7 AM and 7 PM on a weekday. This limited monitoring does not provide a full representation of the traffic flows at the junction. Therefore, the Community Council commissioned an independent traffic survey in July 24. The survey monitored recorded traffic flows from the 4 approaches to this junction. Traffic was recorded for 24 hours a day over a 7-day period between Friday the 5th and Thursday the 11th of July. It found the weekly total vehicles passing through the junction was 167,062. During weekdays between the hours of 7 AM and 9 PM, over 1,000 vehicles passed through the junction every hour. On average, for a full 24-hour period between Monday and Friday, over 24,800 vehicles passed through the junction each day. This did decrease slightly over weekend days as 21,400 vehicles passed through the junction each day. The Community Council believes the current data should be used to determine the likely impact the proposed development would have on traffic flows at the junction. Secondly, the development could have a potential impact on air quality in the area. Data published in 2019 by the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities found the area of Cliftonville and Rushmere had the worst air pollution in the town, and which is where this proposed development would be situated. There needs to be clear understanding from the applicant and West Northants Council regarding the impact the development could have on air quality, ensuring it does not exceed legal thresholds. Thirdly, if the development is permitted, WNC Highways needs to engage proactively with the small garages and body shop repair businesses situated on Ransom Road. Some of these businesses use the verge behind the pavement and double yellow lines to dump cars that are supposedly being worked on. However, on foot, I've observed some of the same cars for months, many of which are in severe disrepair and appear not to be roadworthy. The vehicles are impeding pedestrian access as they block pavements, dangerously forcing pedestrians into the road. The proposed development includes housing for people wishing to start families and establish families. Currently, Ransom Road would not permit safe access for parents taking children to nursery or school on foot. The proposed development should be encouraging this through active travel and low carbon modes of transport, such as cycling. If positive and proactive engagement with the aforementioned businesses regarding abandoned vehicles is not effective, then WNC must ensure robust enforcement for the removal of these vehicles. The Community Council notes the proposed traffic regulation in order to improve and manage parking on Ransom Road. The Community Council would urge the TRO does not have a detrimental impact for the residents living on Ransom Road currently, and that residents and the Community Council are engaged effectively with throughout the process. Finally, the Community Council is disappointed no Section 106 monies will be available for the benefit of the local community. This, amongst others, includes funding for all tiers of education, doctor and dentist surgeries, and local policing. Whilst the independent assessment claims the only monies available to mitigate the environmental impact of the site, a significant investment from the developer is required to decontaminate the land, it is still disappointed that our area, particularly Far Cotton, has been overlooked again concerning these monies. Even if the Community Council had been in receipt of a conservative number of monies, it would have been used effectively for the benefit of our residents. Monies could have been used to support recent work undertaken by the Community Council, such as the refurbishment of the principal play area on the recreation ground in the centre of our community, the development of a neighbourhood plan, supporting sessions we run in the area, including a weekly stay and play session for preschool children, as well as a men's breakfast club. To close, I would kindly request the committee takes on board these concerns when considering this planning application. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bright. If you'd like to remain seated for a second. Yes. Councillor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Service.
A question to Bright, if I may, Councillor Bright. In terms of the application, have you had the applicant come to any of your meetings, public meetings, and discuss that with residents or the council at all?
No, there's been no engagement through the Community Council. I don't believe there's been any direct engagement with residents that would be affected by the development.
And have you as a council approached any residents and tried to have a public meeting and invite the applicant?
So when we looked at this application at our own planning committee meeting, we had several residents come along and they voiced their concerns. They were neighbours to this proposed development. So some of that information that they were concerned about was included in our statutory response to WNC.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Manners, please.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I ask Jason, the Transport Highways, to respond to the points that were made about the traffic surveys, because we seem to have conflicting evidence coming back.
Yes, so the evidence isn't really conflicting. So we've looked through the data that was submitted very late. So we've had a look through it, and it does show on some days there is some higher traffic, on other days there's lower traffic than what was presented in the transport assessment. What it does show is there's an increase in light goods vehicles. That could be because the businesses have ramped up operations since the time of the transport assessment data was taken. But what is key to understand is that it won't greatly impact upon the results of the transport modelling. It's all within the level of fluctuations of the transport data. We're talking about 10 to 20 vehicles in the peak hour. It's not a great deal. It's about 0.16 per minute, I think it is. So it won't have, if you were to remodel it with the new transport data, it would have pretty much the same results. And this is considering that the junction capacity assessment had 20% spare capacity. So there's a lot of wriggle room in the junction capacity assessment.
Thank you, Jason.
And sorry, if I could just follow on from that actually as well. Peak hour data is taken, so 8 from 8 until 9 AM and 5 to 6 PM. These are the peak hours on the network. So, and also for transport, for traffic coming in and out of developments, because it's when people are coming to and from work. So essentially, if the junction works at these times, it's going to work all the time, because that's when it's at its worst. It's called a worst case scenario. So it's a robust assessment. If it works at that time, it's going to work at the rest of the time.
Yep, thank you, Jason. Any other questions for Mr. Bright from any members? Okay, thank you, Mr. Bright. My third speaker is Councillor Julie Davenport, a ward councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Can I, before I start, mention what I mentioned last time that hasn't been addressed? You can't hear everything at the back of the room unless someone has their mouth really close to the mic. So I did contact Democratic Services and ask, just a wireless speaker at the back or anything that can be done, because I can't hear very well at the best of times, but in here, it's a problem. Okay. So the extra parking, that is fantastic. And I'm sure the university students will love it. So, because they'll probably be parking in all those spaces. So I would recommend some kind of permit scheme like they have in other areas that are next to the university, because they can't help it. If there's an empty space, they just take it up and run in to get to a lecture. So Danielle and John have done a great job, and all I will be doing will be reiterating parts that residents have come to me about and businesses about the issues with the access and egress along Ransom Road. Because yes, parking is a big issue, but the main issue after that, well, actually, I think it's before that, is the fact that it is just a single lane. So if you've got a vehicle coming from the top of Ransom Road, you won't be able to get a vehicle going up the road at the same time. And especially when you've got all these articulated lorries that are there. So that is a major problem. Cars have to park on each side of the road because they're residents' cars and they've got to park somewhere. So we only have like single file, and that is going to cause a problem. And like Danielle said, the concerns that have come to me are about pollution, because we have a huge problem in Northampton with poor air quality. So with vehicles idling, because they'll have to queue up in single file to get out, and there'll be more vehicles idling from Asda, which exits onto Ransom Road, that air quality, that is not good for well-being. We say on the one hand, it's all about well-being, but then we allow this with heavy goods vehicles. You've got CEMEX there with their massive cement lorries, which are really heavy, and only go single file as well. Now, the thing that really concerns me now is about this affordable housing, or lack of it, and no infrastructure costs, and Section 106, because we are looking now at planning reforms, and I mentioned this in full council. And that is going to be 40% affordable housing. They'll have to pay money for infrastructure. So I don't know how they're going to do it, because if this small development cannot be viable without the affordable housing, etc., how on earth is this going to be achieved? And I do question the viability. I know it's an independent study, but call me an old cynic. We seem to be having a lot of this, and people coming back and saying, oh, it's not viable, we can't do it anyway. So that is also a big concern. But it is the access and egress, and is to do with pollution.
1 minute to go.
I think that's about it, really. I think everything's been said. Thank you.
You just want to remain seated? Yes, councillor Humphreys, please.
Thank you, councillor Davenport. Could I just ask through you, Chair, a question about the air quality? The environmental health officers advise that an air quality assessment condition be attached to any planning consent. Could officers just elaborate on what that would actually mean?
What, sorry, I haven't got the
Yeah,
figures.
sorry, no,
with
I
me.
was going to ask officers rather than you. But it's related. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, can we hold that until the speaker's finished, and we
Okay.
can ask the officers then, if that's all right, councillor Humphreys. Any direct questions of councillor Davenport? Okay, thank you. Yes, we'll have a chance to review what's been said with the officer at the end of this. So finally, I'd invite Richard West and Simon Tucker to come forward, please. So just to explain why there's two, Richard West is the agent who will be doing the presentation, and alongside him is Simon Tucker, who is a transport and planning consultant for them. So for one will be doing the presentation, at the end, if we have any questions that we need to determine about transport planning considerations, then Simon Tucker will be able to help him in what he's doing, if you get my drift. Right, Mr. West, you have 5 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chair. As I say, I'm Richard West from Serda Planning. I'm joined by Simon Tucker here from DTA Transport Planning Consultants. We're delighted to be able to assist you today, to assist you determining the application, highlight some of the amendments we've made since we last spoke to you in May. As you know, the application's for 273 new homes on a site that's been allocated for housing, but not delivered for 20 years. Bringing forward this brownfield site has taken effort, years and years of effort from Homes England, the council, and now the applicants Tilia Homes, and the investment of millions of pounds, including in the remediation of the site. The council, Homes England and Tilia work closely together to bring forward a scheme that is commercially deliverable after the original applications from years ago couldn't get over the Section 106 because of the associated costs at that time. The council has continued to support the principle of development on this site, including in the emerging Regulation 18 local plan, and now we're seeking to deliver on the council's ambition and provide the much needed housing for local people. Without developing this site, or sites like this, will never meet the growing housing demand and needs for homes across Northampton. Addressing some of the technical points, on flooding, the site's in flood zones 2 and 3, so we need to be elevated out of these zones. This, alongside the significant remediation costs already mentioned, mean there is no viability to deliver the required amount of affordable housing. Notwithstanding this, Tilia and Homes England are committed to delivering and doing everything they can to support local home ownership, and are therefore proposing 24 new affordable homes as part of this development. In relation to public open space, we'll create a brand new public park, and on part of the site that was previously a former landfill. The new park will provide recreational facilities for existing and new residents. On parking, we've listened to the concerns of members and residents at the previous committee meeting and have worked with officers to find a solution. We've increased the number of public parking spaces on Ransom Road from 16 to 32 spaces. This goes above and beyond what is needed based on our technical assessments, but we respect the views of members and residents and would much prefer to work with everyone, including council officers and politicians alike, to deliver the best possible scheme, whilst recognising the proposal already meets all policy requirements, both local and national. On traffic, there's no objection from the local highway authority. We don't believe that this development of new homes here will have a detrimental impact on the local road network, either in terms of highway safety or capacity. Tilia has agreed to provide £6,000 towards a TRO consultation to improve junction queuing capacity, plus the cost of carrying out those works if found to be necessary. Overall, this scheme delivers everything that's needed to create a thriving development for local people, including public open space, affordable homes, and much needed open market housing on a remediated brownfield site. With additional parking to alleviate the concerns and the inclusion of a TRO consultation for single yellow lines on part of Ransom Road, we believe we work constructively with members and taken on board comments from members to deliver a scheme that will be truly transformational for this site. Finally, delivering on decade-old ambition to deliver housing on this site. We've reached out to ward members, offered briefings, and have been available to speak to directly so we can address concerns and work together. Just in terms of the points raised in respect of Section 106 money and the required infrastructure, we have acknowledged that there is a viability position here and we're not necessarily able to meet all of the requested funds. But one thing that we would highlight, which we don't think has been, is that we're still required to pay for the community infrastructure levy, which is approximately £1.3 million. That's at the council's discretion on how they want to spend that. So if they want to spend that on local services and local infrastructure, then it's at their discretion to do so. Also, in terms of air quality, I'd just highlight that the current building regulations require that every new dwelling has an electric vehicle charging point, which will obviously help to reduce emissions from any vehicles occupying this site.
1 minute to go.
So thank you, no problem. And also, the design of this site is without gas, so there's no boilers, which traditionally in houses obviously also create emissions. So these are low emission homes and they will be served by low emission vehicles as well. There's no statutory consultees that have objected to this application. Your officers recommend approval of this development on new homes on this brownfield site. We ask members to approve the recommendations of the officers and grant permission for this development on this site. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Right, any questions from members? Yes, Councillor Gonzalez Savage, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just pick up a point there, Mr. West, that you've indicated no statutory consultees have objected to this. I believe that the Community Council of Delaprey and Far Cotton are a statutory consultee and they have objected.
They're a consultee. They're not a statutory consultee in terms of they're not a technical consultee. So maybe that's
I
not
would think that
intended to be
they are
misleading.
described as statutory in our minds. But I would ask you, Mr. West, why have you not consulted with them directly? Why have you not attended their meetings and held a public meeting effectively to explain to residents of the area what you're trying to do?
As far as I can't say as to why we didn't initially go and see them, but we've not been invited along. But since the last committee meeting, we've certainly reached out to ward members as representative of the residents to sort of seek that engagement from there.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chairman, if I may. The element clearly of a local council, community council, is really important to communities. You know, you're trying to create one, you've applied to do that. May I ask you what you would say to a prospective customer if you do receive planning permission on this, who comes along with 2 children or 1 child or a family or in mind? Where would they take their children, prospective children, to school? Where would they go to a dentist or doctor's surgery in the area, please?
Well, as I say, they would use the existing facilities, and those catchments presumably would be amended accordingly for the facilities. And as we say, there is a still infrastructure levy there of £1.3 million to be spent on whatever infrastructure it is that the council see fit, which could indeed be such facilities. It's unfortunate, as we say, that we can't deliver all of the infrastructure necessary, but that is one of the elements that unfortunately we're unable to do because of the significant costs of remediating this site. And it's been an aspiration of the council to bring this forward for 20 years, acknowledging that there are some shortfalls that need to be weighed against the positives of redeveloping a brownfield site in a sustainable location close to the town centre.
Okay, that Mr. Weston will be practically a primary school worth of children, if you like, on site if you do build 217
But-
homes there.
To be fair, this isn't for the debate.
It's a question I've got from a community perspective, Mr. Chairman.
Well, they provided what they can afford.
I don't believe they provided anything at all. 1.3 million, Mr. Chairman, I think, is the smallest possible amount and actually wouldn't even pay for a one form entry primary school.
Right, and I'll take my legal expert on my right to give you.
Just to remind members, obviously, there is a viability appraisal has been undertaken. It has been appraised by the council and agreed by the council at that point in time. It has the outcome of that is that there is reduced affordable housing being provided on the site, although there is still some affordable housing being provided on the site. There are no GP and schools and all of that side of things on it, but there are still 106 contributions being made in addition to a SIL payment, which will then be cascaded through. A percentage of that SIL payment will be payable to the local council area, depending on local plan, will depend on neighbourhood plan, will depend on the amount that will be cascaded over. So there is a fund available. It's just simply the fact that at the point of assessment, when the viability assessment was submitted to the council, that assessment was agreed. That isn't a matter for discussion today under this committee. So I appreciate members' comments on the 106 infrastructure concerns, but that has already been an accepted position with the council.
And it's policy, well, it's more than policy compliant. The viability says there should be no affordable housing. We have affordable housing, so it has gone beyond. So we're getting more than we deserve, are entitled to. So it's more than policy compliant at the end of the day. Any more questions for the agent or his transport consultant? No. Okay. Fair challenge. Thank you, sir. Any other questions at all? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. So as the gentleman suggested, please have the microphone as close as possible to you when you speak. Rebecca, do you want to come back on anything from the discussion we've had from the speakers at all, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of air quality, there is a condition on there, condition 15, which requires them to submit an air quality assessment. Our environmental health officer has reviewed the information that was submitted with the application and has found the details acceptable, but obviously subject to the imposition of that condition. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Okay, then. So we're now in a open debate situation. Don't need to ask questions now. It's for you to debate the information you've heard so far. Does anybody want to start? Yes, Councillor Purser, please.
Chair, I think this is a welcome proposal because it's a site that needs developing. But I think it just shows the difficulty a committee like this is put in when comparing a brownfield site like this with a greenfield site that we receive on other occasions. A greenfield site, we have funds to put into infrastructure, so those communities get good infrastructure. What we have here is, yes, a worthy scheme, but it will be at the expense of facilities for other local residents. And that's a real concern that I've got. But I see that we have to support this scheme because it's bringing housing. But I have to say that the local community here gets a raw deal out of it. And really, there is a challenge to our whole planning system that there is a level playing field between the greenfield sites and the brownfield sites. We don't have at the moment. And so our communities in our inner city areas kind of pay the price for that. And I think that's a problem for us. So if I vote for this, it will be with a heavy heart, because I think it is not ideal.
Yes, I think we perhaps couldn't argue with that, Councillor Burser. Thank you. Councillor, who else wants to debate this? Councillor Manners, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would support Councillor Purser. I will vote for this with a heavy heart. I suspect that the lack of contribution to the local areas is much a measure of the 200 homes versus the 2,000 that we see on other applications. I do think that there are questions still on the highways. I don't think that they've been. I just worry when I see this development in 3 or 4 years' time, whether those will come true. But I also don't think we've addressed properly Councillor Gonzalez's point about the turning circle there either. And I do think that the level of detail in this still has to be thought through. But I will be supporting the principle of the development. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you're absolutely right in what you say, without a doubt. Anybody else want to join in? Anything else to say beyond where we've got to? So again.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just to elaborate, I do strongly feel that this site is not certainly ideal for any reason whatsoever to have a structure of homes being developed in an area which is brownfield, constrained by so many road network areas here and developments, quite clearly does not provide medical facilities, doctors, surgeries for any of the prospective families if this application is carried through today. As we have discussed, I do feel very strongly about the highway link to the south of the site, which is effectively an extension of the Ransom Road strip, which isn't currently there. And I do feel that we should be ensuring that that is dealt with accurately before development goes ahead of any type on that site. I've walked it many times. I know the area very well. And I do know the congestion that also develops on that junction. And I do think that that's been underestimated in terms of the reality effect, not just the counting of vehicles and seeing the sizable number that go through that junction. I think we said 25,000 a day, 167,000 vehicles per week. But I do feel that there should be also much more pedestrian friendly access to the other side, so St Leonard's Road from Ransom Road, which currently is over traffic islands, and with the increased number of vehicles there, it isn't really very friendly to certainly encourage a community to link up with the rest of the area. And I do strongly feel that developers, I'm sure, will build some lovely homes and wherever they are, because they clearly are up to a standard which obviously has to be quite clearly checked very carefully, but they would be selling homes to people under false impressions that they would be able to get their children to local schools or to get doctors and dentists, because there just aren't any. As a local resident, I can absolutely confirm there aren't 200 spaces in the schools locally. There aren't 200 dentists, and there certainly aren't appointments at doctor surgeries locally as part of the local area partnership. I can absolutely guarantee to you, if there's something we have identified through that, is that that site is not viable for 217 homes. But I absolutely understand the current government's ambition to try and plan development on every possible piece of land, and our need for a substantial number of homes. I am very concerned about the low levels of affordable housing of any type. Frankly, I think this is not a viable plan, and I don't think it should have been accepted. And I absolutely agree, Mr. Chairman, that clearly it might comply with policy, but it's not reality. Thank you.
It is policy compliant. We also have secured a TRO review, which is open to everybody at the end of the day. That will run in parallel with this application and will have local input, etc. We've obtained more parking spaces on this development. So it has changed since the last time. And any more?
Yeah, I've listened to everybody, and I think we're all saying the same thing, but we need those houses and everything else that goes with it. And I therefore propose that we accept officer's advice.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you, Miss Councillor Chandler. Sorry, not Mr. Councillor Chandler. We're happy to go to a vote. We accept the officer's recommendations and the enhanced TRO review that's going to go on in the extra spaces. If so, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Those against? I haven't done the maths. Is everybody abstaining? No. So the count is Mr. Edmonds.
Through you, Chair. So there were 8 members in favour of accepting the advice and 3 members against and 2 members of the committee not present.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. So that concludes the business of today. Again, we'll remind you about the site visit and the meetings on the 3rd. It's a very important application. The DHL one's probably the biggest one we've had through here for a while and the most significant, and obviously the planning meeting on the 10th. It being 3:06, I declare the meeting closed and thank you for your attendance. Thank you.